It all started when I accepted a last-minute dog-sitting request on Rover. The owners were an older couple that needed someone to watch their golden retriever in their home for the weekend. Their account had no reviews, but they were offering double my usual rate because of the snowstorm coming in, so I agreed. The house was quaint. A small bungalow that was nicely furnished and decorated, tucked away in a quiet neighborhood. When I arrived, the couple was already packed, their suitcases sitting by the front door as if they were ready to leave in a hurry. They seemed nice enough, but the woman kept saying, "Oliver gets nervous at night." I figured she meant separation anxiety, which I had dealt with many times. Before leaving, the husband pulled me aside and said, "Oh, one thing, don't go into the basement. We just painted and the floors are still wet." I said no problem. I wasn't planning on exploring their house anyways. That first night, everything seemed normal. I made a frozen pizza for dinner, played with Oliver, and continued a show I'd been watching on Netflix. Outside, the storm was getting worse. The wind was howling and snow was hitting the windows. It felt safe and cozy being indoors and having Oliver to snuggle with on the couch. I was getting ready for bed when I heard it. A creaking sound. I froze. It came from somewhere below me and almost sounded like a floorboard creaking. Oliver lifted his head from his bed in the corner, ears twitching. I muted the television and listened. Nothing. It was probably just the storm outside. Still, I got up to check. The basement door was in the hallway by the kitchen. Oliver followed me, as if he was eager to go into the basement. "Sorry, bud, we can't go down there tonight." I reached for the doorknob, locked. I exhaled, relieved. Nothing could have gotten in. I figured the house was just old, settling in the cold. I thought it was strange how the house didn't smell of fresh paint considering the basement floor had just been painted. But I went to bed shortly after and completely forgot about it. The next day was normal. I worked on my laptop, took Oliver for a walk in the snow, made some pasta, and watched a movie. Realizing it was past 1 a.m., I started getting ready for bed. I must have dozed off because the last time I checked the time, it was only 11. I was standing in front of the mirror, getting undressed, but something felt off. I can't explain it. Just an eerie, nagging feeling. Oliver was trembling and seemed on edge. I knew he had anxiety at night, but it seemed different than the night before. I stared at my reflection. Then, out of nowhere, I remembered a trick I saw online. I pressed my fingertip against the mirror. No gap. My stomach dropped. I tapped the mirror. Hollow. There was space behind it. My mouth went dry. Is this one of those two-way mirrors? I immediately Googled it, which confirmed my worst fear. I then searched how to spot hidden cameras, and using my phone light, I scanned the house looking for potential cameras. Heart pounding, I looked toward the bathroom. The exhaust fan. Climbing onto the counter to get closer, I shined my phone light inside. There, a tiny, dark circle. A camera. I could even see a faint, flickering light that seemed to be covered by a piece of tape. My chest tightened. Someone had been watching me. My hands were shaking as I grabbed my phone to call someone, anyone. Then I heard Oliver. A low, anxious whine. I stepped into the hallway. Oliver was pacing back and forth by the basement door, ears flattened. Then I saw it. The door. It was open a crack. I stopped breathing. That door was locked the night before. A shiver crawled up my spine. My whole body was screaming at me to leave, but instead I grabbed my phone, its flashlight still on, and stepped forward. With one finger, I nudged the door open. It creaked, revealing a staircase leading into pitch black. With no light switch in sight, I lifted my phone, trying to shine the light down, but it barely cut through the darkness. Then, right as I took a step forward, someone cleared their throat. A deep, male voice. My whole body locked up. The air felt thick, heavy. Then, the floorboard squeaked. Footsteps? It sounded like footsteps. I turned and bolted, but my sock caught on a crack in the wooden stairs. My ankle twisted and I fell hard, my phone flying from my grip. Pain shot through my foot, but I scrambled up, yanked my foot free, leaving my sock behind, and ran. Behind me, pounding footsteps. I didn't stop, didn't look back. I hit the front door full force, yanking it open and pushing my way through the uncleared snowy driveway. It was so cold it burned, but I kept running. One barefoot, in my pajama shorts, I ran down the empty street. It must have been at least 2 a.m. by now. I ran until my lungs ached, until my vision blurred. Then, like a miracle, I noticed a gas station up ahead that appeared to be still open. I burst through the doors, breathless, shaking, half frozen. The clerk just stared. One barefoot, one sock missing, eyes wide with terror. I gripped the counter. My voice barely worked. Call the police. The police found cameras everywhere, in the vents, in several mirrors, even inside the kitchen smoke detector. And in the basement, a hidden room that was only accessible from inside the laundry room. Inside the room, there was a mattress, a computer monitor, and a pile of SD cards. And on the floor, sitting neatly in the corner, a single crumpled sock. I don't know what would have happened if I hadn't run. I don't want to know. I never heard from the owners again and never returned to get my belongings. Their Rover account was deleted the next morning. The number they gave me was disconnected. It was like they never existed. But I know someone was there that weekend, watching me, hiding, waiting. For what? I'll never know.
It was my first semester of university. I decided to join Rover to earn some extra cash on top of my part-time job. With pets of my own, I figured it would be easy money. After a few uneventful weeks, I finally received a request for a cat-sitting job. It seemed easy. 2 weeks, 1 visit per day, no overnight stays. The homeowners even left the key in a lockbox by the front door, which was perfect for my social anxiety. Or at least, it should have been perfect. The house was nice, modern, spotless with lots of sunlight. The 2 cats, Milo and Beans, were skittish at first, but they warmed up to me when I took out a bag of treats. I decided to set up a pet camera in the kitchen, facing their food bowls, so I could check in on them between visits. Nothing seemed unusual at first, just normal, playful cat stuff. Until day 3. I was in bed when my phone buzzed with a motion alert from the pet cam. I opened the app and saw Milo sitting by the food bowl, ears pinned back, staring at something. Then, the screen flickered. For a split second, I thought I saw movement in the background, a dark figure, too tall to be a cat. But then the camera cut out completely. When the feed finally came back, everything looked normal again, but I could swear that the camera's angle had changed slightly. I told myself it was a glitch and didn't think much more of it. The camera had glitched on me in the past when my internet connection was weak. When I went to feed the cats the next day, I taped down the camera to make sure it wouldn't budge. But the next night, it happened again. It was 2:47 a.m, and I was woken up by a notification. I was half asleep when I opened the app, but this time, the kitchen was empty. Except, something was off. It took me a second to realize. The camera was now facing the wall, but what really sent a chill down my spine was the faint shadow on the wall. It looked like someone had just walked past. I squinted at the screen, trying to make sense of it. The shadow seemed too tall to be a cat. I also didn't recall turning a light on in the house. A chill crawled up my spine. Had I not just taped the camera down earlier today? Where was this light coming from? I stared at the live feed, my heart pounding. I had set it up securely. There was no way it could have just moved on its own. But the longer I stared, the more I second-guessed myself. Maybe I'd missed something. It's fine, I told myself. The cats must have knocked it over, even though I knew it was too high for them to reach. Maybe I hadn't noticed the light before, and it was on all along. I shut off my phone and buried my face in my pillow, hoping sleep would come. The next morning, I woke up early and drove straight to the house, feeling uneasy. Everything looked normal when I stepped inside. The cats meowed and rubbed against my legs. I exhaled, relieved. Maybe I'd overreacted. But then, as I walked into the living room, I saw it. The curtain shifted, just a tiny movement, like someone was standing behind it, barely breathing. Every muscle in my body went rigid. I didn't move, didn't blink. My mind raced, trying to come up with a logical explanation. Maybe it was the heater. Maybe it was the wind. Maybe. Then, the fabric twitched again, and the cats started getting suspicious of it as well. as if they wanted to attack something that was there. And that's when I noticed that the pet cam had been unplugged and was now sprawled out on the living room floor. I slowly backed up until I hit the front door. Without locking the door behind me, I sprinted to my car, jumped in, and peeled out of there. Shaking, I tried calling the Rover woman who hired me. Straight to voicemail. I texted. No response. Panic settled in my stomach. Something was wrong. I didn't know what else to do, so I called the police. I felt stupid at first. Was I really about to tell them I was scared of a moving curtain? But when they ran a check on the homeowners, things got so much worse. They got in contact with them overseas. And here's the thing. They never hired me to feed their cats. They did hire someone though, an older man. They had no idea who I was, or who had been messaging me. Eventually, they figured it out. The man the homeowners originally hired must have outsourced the job to me, posing as a woman on Rover. But for what reason? Had he planned something more sinister? Was I supposed to walk in on something even worse than what I had already witnessed? The police later told me the man was linked to several disappearances of women in the area, women who had never been found. He'd never been convicted, of course, but there was always suspicion surrounding him. I guess my pet camera was the only thing that stopped him. The police suspect he had something much darker planned, but my camera must have thrown him off. Maybe he thought he'd been caught before things could escalate. I don't know what his true intentions were, but all I do know is that I've never used Rover since. I'd been walking Skip every weekday at noon for 2 weeks straight. It was a simple gig. The owner, a bearded man who looked to be in his late 40s, worked long hours and had hired me through Rover to make sure Skip got his midday exercise while he was away at work. I never met him in person. He left instructions through the app, and my only access to the house was through the garage. He gave me the access code on the first day. Every day was the same routine. I'd punch in the code, the garage door would rumble open, I'd step inside, walk through the garage, and enter into the hallway through a closed door. I'd leash up Skip, take him for an hour-long walk through the nearby trails, give him a few treats, and leave. Easy money. Until one day, I arrived right at noon, as usual, and tapped the numbers into the keypad. Invalid code. I frowned and tried again. Slower this time. Invalid code. That was weird. The owner never mentioned anything about changing it. I pulled out my phone and sent him a quick message. Hey, just got here, but the garage code isn't working. Did it change? A minute passed. Then, another. No response. Skip started barking inside. I heard his paws tapping against the living room window, excited like he always was before our walk. I sighed and leaned against the garage door. Hopefully he'd answer soon so I can get on with my day. Right as I was about to give up and bike home, my phone dinged. Sorry, the system resets sometimes. Try this one. I punched in the new code. The garage hummed to life, the door rolling open. I exhaled and stepped inside. I walked through the garage and opened the inner door that led to the hallway. Skip wagged his tail, trotting circles around me as I grabbed the leash from its hook. Just as I clipped it on, I heard something behind me. The garage door closing. I barely had time to react before it slammed shut. The finality of the sound sent a strange chill up my spine. No big deal. It might have something to do with the system being reset. I pressed the white button on the wall to open it back up. Nothing. I pressed it again. Still nothing. I frowned, tapping it a third time. Harder this time. The button wasn't working. Okay, I muttered under my breath, trying not to feel weird about it. Maybe the power flickered or something. I turned toward the automatic overhead light, expecting it to flicker on. It didn't. A ripple of unease crawled up my spine. The automatic light always turned on when I entered. Always. But now, nothing. Just an unsettling, suffocating darkness. I turned to head back inside, wondering why Skip hadn't followed me into the garage. The inner door to the house was closed shut. I didn't remember closing it. I grabbed the handle and twisted. Locked. My stomach dropped. I knocked, pressing my ear against the door, straining to hear anything. Nothing. No voices. no footsteps, just Skip's panting behind the door and the sound of his leash clanking against the floor. I reached into my pocket for my phone. It wasn't there. Shit. My stomach dropped. My phone was still in the bag attached to my bike. Outside. Useless. I took a shaky breath and knocked again, louder this time. Skip? Silence. I called his name, expecting the familiar sound of his paws, scrambling back to the door. But there was nothing. No whining, no clicking nails on the floor, like he was never there at all. A slow, creeping unease settled in my chest. I was trapped in a dark garage, with no phone and no way out, inside the house of a man I had never actually met in person. My breath hitched. I spun toward the door, my fingers fumbling for the button again. I slammed my hand against it, over and over. Nothing. Although it was hard to see in the dark, the garage was mostly empty. Just some storage bins stacked along the walls, a bike, a tool rack, an old fridge in the corner. I reached out, fumbling along the wall until my fingers brushed the light switch. I flipped it up. Nothing. I flipped it down, then up again. Still nothing. Dread settled deep in my bones. Something wasn't right. I stood there, my heart pounding so hard I thought it might burst out of my chest. The darkness around me felt heavier now, like it was pressing in, suffocating. I turned toward the fridge, stumbling forward. My hands found the handle, and I yanked it open, letting the cold, dim light spill out. It wasn't much, but it was better than nothing. I took a shaky breath, my stomach twisting. I had no phone, no way out, and no idea how long I'd be stuck here. Panic clawed at my throat, but I forced myself to focus. Minutes blurred into hours, and I grew hungry. I needed to ration whatever I could find. Inside the fridge were a few beers, some cans of Diet Pepsi, and a pack of applesauce cups. That was it. I grabbed an applesauce, tearing it open with trembling fingers. Hours turned into what felt like days. I lost track of time completely. The light from the fridge only lasted so long before the bulb started flickering, and I had to start feeling my way around in the pitch-black garage. I barely slept, jumping at every sound, at every creak. I stayed pressed against the cold concrete floor. Then, footsteps. At first I thought I imagined them, but no, they were real, slow, deliberate, coming from the hallway. I held my breath, my entire body locked in place. Then came the metallic scrape of a crowbar against the door. The side door creaked open, a figure stepping inside. I could only make out the silhouette, a tall man, heavy boots, something glinting in his hand. We locked eyes. My pulse exploded. I lunged for the nearest thing, a can of Diet Pepsi I hadn't yet opened, and hurled it straight at his head. It hit with a sickening thud. He stumbled back, just enough for me to bolt. I ran blindly, fumbling for the front door. My heart slammed against my ribs as I twisted the knob. Unlocked. I shoved it open and sprinted into the street, screaming for help. It was dark out, but I had no idea if it was 10 p.m. or 3 a.m. A car screeched to a stop, headlights flooding over me. The driver rolled down the window, her face wide with shock. "Please," I gasped. "Call the police." She did without hesitation. We waited in her car until a police car finally pulled up behind us. I got into the police car and told them everything. They drove me to the station where I filled out an official police report. I called my mum and spent the week at her house. A few weeks later, I finally heard back from the detective I spoke to. It turns out the guy that hired me, he had been stalking me for over a year. When the police searched his house, they found hundreds of pictures of me, photos of me walking a neighbour's dogs, of me leaving my apartment on different days, at different times. It all made sense. Why this new Rover account reached out to me, offering more than my usual rate. Apparently the dog had been adopted from a shelter the same week I was hired. It explains why he didn't respond at all to his name. The police found out he had been parking his car at the nearby grocery store every afternoon, making it look like he wasn't home. But he was. He had been there the whole time, waiting for the perfect moment. Waiting for me. What he planned to do, I don't know. I don't want to know. I stopped using Rover after that, except for my ongoing clients.